Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1978-81 carryover league for the fall of 2022. We are continuing looking at the trade carousel. This was the third and final installment. To get to the proper number of keep, waived, and retired guys, we did the first video was 8 teams drafting 1st through 8th. Then we looked at 9th through 16th. We're going to wrap it up with the second half of the league. It all comes together quickly after that. We left off with the Yankees and the Dodgers making a trade that sends ripples around baseball. This trade didn't actually happen, of course, but it'll be impactful for the carryover league. The Yankees sent retiring Paul Lindblad to the Dodgers to create a roster spot for Tommy John. It's a way of sort of simulating free agency, but the Dodgers don't get one, they get 2 draft tokens out of the Yankees for this deal. And a little bit of controversy there because Tommy John's a great pitcher, but wow, that's a lot of 2 draft tokens for this guy. But it's because the Dodgers get nothing out of this deal, and they were just trying to get down to 4 keepers. They ultimately do that to keep Bill Russell as their 4th keeper. So let's move ahead. The next team to analyze in this group right here, this will be a Las Vegas team, and they didn't do anything. They started at 4-0-2-2. And they stayed at 4-0-2-2, and they didn't do anything involving the trade carousel. They kind of stayed quiet. They liked the cards they were dealt. So we'll go directly then to the next team, Minnesota. And they had some moves to make in this draft. We can take a look at their starting look here. There we go. And they made some notes to trade Fred Norman. They did. They got Kuzman. And they didn't trade Bill North. However, this guy was traded. So let's take a look at this. On the trade carousel, the next trade. So after a 2-token trade happened, which doesn't happen very much, it's happened like once in the last 3 years doing this carousel thing, I followed up with another one. Baltimore sends retiring Paul Blair to the Twins for Larry Heisel. Larry Heisel's got some gas in the tank, folks. He actually went from the Twins to the Brewers. Now, if you go to the Brewers for a moment, the Brewers had no room at the inn for Larry Heisel to be acquired in the offseason for a couple of reasons. First reason is that they went after him, reacquired Jim Slayton, brought him back into the mix. And the Brewers are saying, we have a loaded offense, let's go fix the pitching staff. So they're going to make Moose Haas better. They're bringing back Jim Slayton. Pete Vukovich will win an 81. I think he wins a Cy Young or MVP or something like that. And Bob McClure is always good in this period. So they decided to go with keepers of the pitching variety. And Heisel can't really play left field. They have Gorman Thomas in center, Sixto Lezcano in right, and they still have Asselstein as a platoon corner left fielder. He's not great, but he's good enough. He's under contract for 1 more year. So they couldn't afford Heisel. And the Orioles, interestingly, had no center fielder because after Paul Blair and Carlos Lopez also leaves, gets put on waivers. They have Lowenstein in left field. Al Bumbry is on the expansion Las Vegas squad. They had no center fielder. So it's a risk. Heisel's not a center fielder either, but he can play there. So they're going to take a defensive hit, do the Orioles, but it is to get the stick into center field. So immediately, the Yankees and the Orioles suffer double token deficits here by acquiring these guys. So it better work out. Tommy John in New York and Larry Heisel in Baltimore. If it doesn't work out, you wasted draft tokens. That seemed to solidify Minnesota for the moment. Then Baltimore, this is an incidental trade. You'll see a lot of these at the bottom of the sheet. Just to get their record keeping, teams will trade retired guys for waivered guys without token consideration. It's kind of a courtesy trade because it helps both teams Baltimore gets the right number of players. Boston gets the right number of players. So we see this a lot within division even. All right, the next team after the Twins, Arizona. I think they might have made a move or two. Maybe they didn't. We'll go skip Arizona because California and Florida and the Ohio players are all up here. This is a fun trade. Both these guys are keepers, but I made this a fair trade. Cliff Johnson for Ivan DeJesus. Johnson with a big stick. Doesn't always hit lefties and righties well, but boy, this guy can crush the ball. DeJesus, just the opposite, can't crush the ball, but he's a slick fielding shortstop with almost 700 plate appearances for the Cubs during this period. And this would solidify, and this is interesting, the Angels had Kessinger last year, and then they got DeJesus through a proxy in this deal. But the Angels couldn't get Rick Burleson. They tried to get him in the offseason. They couldn't, so they settled for Ivan DeJesus at short. They also picked up Fred Patek, so they had their choice of shortstops moving forward after they were weak at that position. Cliff Johnson is going to be penciled in to be catcher for the Ohio players as Gary Alexander retires, as is Earl Williams. And then the Angels, after that trade, then said, you know what? I'd rather have the draft token because I got Patek. So they sent Ivan DeJesus to Florida for Mario Guerrero, who used to play for the Angels, to put him on waivers. This is where the Angels get a draft token. So basically, they moved Cliff Johnson, got a draft token in the two moves. All right, then we have a blockbuster trade here. Who's next on the clock, by the way? Detroit didn't do anything. Oh, yeah, the Pirates. Arizona, we'll get back to them later. Detroit sat with what they had. The Pirates, and here it is. This is a big, big trade to unpack here between the Seattle Mariners and the Pirates. Pittsburgh, and you're like, wow, why'd they give all this up? They traded Al Oliver and Rich Gossage, Hall of Famer and almost Hall of Famer, to Seattle for a really good Leon Roberts and Enrique Romo card, who's on a keeper. But the move is that each of these, instead of, remember up here we had 2 tokens for Heisel, 2 tokens for John, individual tokens for Gossage and Oliver. Interestingly, though, Oliver's not even on the Pirates and with his card in '78. He's with the Texas Rangers. So Seattle smartly got Al Oliver for 1 year. And Leon Roberts only has 1 really good year left in '78. The green indicates the current card, and it's both their '78 cards. So these are one year fixes. Oliver hits .320 with this card. Roberts hits .301 with that card. Pittsburgh could use some more right-handed pop, because they have a bunch of left-handed hitters in Pittsburgh, Parker, Moreno, and Stargell, you know those guys. Enrique Romo got a World Series ring for the Pirates from Seattle, so that actually happened. Romo did go to Pittsburgh. And the deal with Gossage is that the Yankees had no room at the inn for Rich Gossage this year. Let's take a look here. Remember, they went after Tommy John. They have Sparky Lyle, Thurman Munson, Piniella. You could say the Thurman Munson continuing into post his tragic death into 1980, 81, 82, whatever, is a great story for the carryover league, but it also means that Gossage will have to wait another year before he gets to put the pinstripes on. So he'll be in Seattle for 1 year. That was a fun trade. And Pittsburgh gets the tokens. So even if it seems they lose talent, they get tokens. Then Seattle, after losing the 2 tokens and realizing they're an expansion team, says, you know what, we need to get a token back. So Seattle packages Rudy May to the Expos for Mike Willis, a downgrade, significant downgrade in left-handed starting pitching. Rudy May actually did play for the Expos, so this makes sense. And then after that, we're going to see a series of Waive retired trades so that teams get into the proper number. Let's look at the beginning of this trade carousel. We were +2 keepers, +13 waivers, -15 retired guys. And eventually, once everybody secured the keepers they wanted, it turned out that the waiver pool went from 14 and the retired pool was short 14. So basically, the last transactions in our league would have to be sliding 14 guys over. Simply, the waiver pool is so big that you have to take the worst waivered players and make them retired, which is a good thing because you could pull a guy out of retirement. Teams that needed a waivered player included the Dodgers, and you see they're trading in the division. And most of the time, the transactions involve the same kind of player. Left-handed reliever for left-handed reliever. One's a waiver, one's retire. Infielder, retired infielder, waived infielder. Left-handed hitter between these teams. And that meant that every team had at least 2 guys going on to the waivered list with 14 too many, and I just made a global. I did all these transactions individually. 14 players moved from waive to retire. It was the last step I did. I didn't report it right here because, frankly, all I did was, and let me see if I can find one off the top here. I think we had, here we are, Toronto. Basically, Gene Kleins was a waivered guy, and I slid him into retirement. So they were at 403.01. And Gene Kleins is near the end of his rope here. Basically, there's 14 guys like this who were considered to be $100, and they were downgraded to $1. And I don't think I can find any really quickly here. Ran him. Let me see if I can find any other quick one to wrap this. Hector Cruz was on waivers. Now he's in retirement. Let's see. Vic Davalillo was on waivers. Now he's in retirement. Don Kessinger was in waivers. He's in retirement. They had 4 waivered guys. Now they're down to 2. See, when the Angels at one time had 4 guys on waivers, but they had no takers for the talent. So they just had to push them in retirement. Nobody wants to make a deal with you. Glenn Burke was on waivers, goes to retirement. Let's see here. Jim Norris acquired in the trade with the Buddy Bell, Toby Harrah, Mike Hargrove, ends up getting moved from waivers to retirement anyway because they already had enough. They had Roland Offs and Mickey Rivers as left-handed corner outfield, center outfield types. Pedro Rabon going from waivers to retirement. Dave Campbell going from waivers to retirement. And generally, they probably would have only had 1 year left anyway, and it would have been 1978. And we'll just stop there. I can keep going, but you get the general idea. It's not very consequential because, again, when it comes to the draft, retired guys, if their card exists, can be drafted, just like waiver guys. The point of this is just to make sure that mathematically we have the correct number of 4, 2, and 2 for competitive balance for 32 teams. 128, 64, 64, and that's what we got up to, 128, 64, 64. You see the where we started is here with this line, you know, after the first digit, then the next 2 digits. This parsed out means 2 keep, 2 waived, 4 retired. And by the end of this carousel, everybody checks off and says we're happy. Everybody's at 40202 for the number 128, 64, 64. That's 256 players leaving the league for the moment to be drafted in 8 rounds. So that'll be a wrap today for this installment of the trade carousel. Now it's just about organizing data and creating spreadsheets to start planning for a draft. But at least the end interviews are done so that the league can now transition into the next season. Thanks for checking out the video. We'll see you next time.